It's early midnight, your campfire is starting to die down, and you're thinking of packing it in for the night, crawling into your tent and sleeping bag, and getting whatever rest you need for the next day's adventures. You're camped out on a lake shore and completely surrounded by mountains. It's a well-trafficked area, so you're somewhat comfortable. You're also prepared for pretty much anything that could possibly happen. You have bear spray, first aid supplies, and a method of communication to friends and family. But before you came to this area, it didn't cross your mind to look into its strange history. And why would you these days? You saw other people's social media posts and beautiful photos featuring this very spot. And that was enough for you to make up your mind and decide that this is where you were going to spend your weekend off. What you didn't know is that there is an unsettling number of people that have gone missing at this very lake. People who have totally vanished and were never found or heard from ever again. On top of that, there are endless indigenous tales of mystical creatures said to roam the forests, and some that even reside in the lake itself. Whatever kind of stuff went on in the past doesn't really matter at this point though, because you're here, you're alone, and you have no clue. You get all cozy in your sleeping bag, you turn off your headlamp, and just before you start to fall asleep, you hear something that sends your heart racing. It sounds like footsteps, and they're getting closer to your camp. Did I pack up all the food? Did I leave any garbage out? Am I about to have a midnight run-in with a grizzly bear? You start asking yourself these questions. You lay there in complete silence, trying to listen to the incoming thing. But the footsteps stop, and eventually you struggle to keep your eyes open any longer. You fall asleep. A few hours go by and you wake up to the urgent need to pee. The absolute worst feeling in the world for anyone camping in a tent. It's still pitch black out, and all is quiet. So you strap on your headlamp, you throw on your boots, unzip the tent, and awkwardly stumble outside half asleep. You make your way to the edge of camp, to some bushes, and begin to relieve yourself. But you notice something strange. It's not a sound or a smell or anything like that, but it's a feeling in the pit of your stomach that some sort of danger is close by. Something is watching you. You frantically zip yourself up and turn around to head back for the tent, and that's when you see it, about 100 yards away down the shore, standing at the water's edge and illuminated by moonlight. An upright being, like a man, but seemingly of giant proportions, just standing there, watching. It's been there the whole time, for hours, just waiting to take you. Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a place called Devil's Lake. Now, Devil's Lake isn't the official name of it. It's Lake Minnewanka. It's located in Banff National Park here in Alberta, Canada. And it's a place that's just shrouded in mystery. I've talked about it a couple times a long time ago on this channel because it does have a rich history of Bigfoot reports, and most of them come from the late 1800s. Lake Minnewanka also has a history of creatures that live in the water, specifically a merman-like creature, and there's actually a specimen on display at the Banff Trading Post that you can go look at. It's in like a case. I've seen it there myself a couple times, and it's one of the ugliest things I think I've ever set eyes upon. But anyways, this place, like most places with the name Devil in the name, has a very rich history of Sasquatch, of Bigfoot. And I don't know why that is. If you look on a map, like in pretty much every mountainous area, you'll find places that have a name with the word devil in it. Devil's Gap, Devil's Lake, Devil's Head Lake. Those are, some of the names that Lake Minnewanka is known by. But you hear all kinds of other ones. Devil's Canyon, Devil's whatever. The list goes on and on. And usually if you look into the history of these places, you will find some strange reports. And, there's a very good chance you'll find lots of Bigfoot reports. But Lake Minnewanka is a place that is usually quite busy with tourists, which is quite surprising. There's lots of missing people reports from the area, which kind of add to this Bigfoot mystery. And it's just a beautiful wilderness area that lots of people enjoy. every year. But before we get into the Bigfoot stuff, let's have a look at the history of Devil's Lake. In the summer of 1841, Sir George Simpson, during his ambitious quest to circumnavigate the planet, entered Devil's Gap via the Ghost Valley and found 4 pristine lakes connected by small streams. The largest of the lakes sat at the western end of the valley, which Simpson named Peachy Lake, after Alexis Peachy, chief of the Mountain Cree and lead guide for Simpson's party. Although Simpson was one of the first Europeans to set eyes on the glacial lake, the valley and surrounding area had been used for hunting and camping for centuries. Prior to Simpson's arrival, the Stoney people referred to the lake as Minwaki, or Lake of the Spirits. The name was in reference to a legend that spoke of an Aboriginal man who was the first to lay eyes on the body of water from the summit of one of the highest mountains overlooking the lake. From his elevated vantage point, the man noticed a fish that appeared to be as long as the lake, leading him to call the lake Lake of the Evil Water Spirit. The Stoney people both respected and feared the lake for its resident spirits. Another popular legend that references water spirits speaks of a mythical half-man, half-fish creature that once lived in the lake. Their grotesque merman struck fear and panic in all those who saw it swimming in the emerald water before it was allegedly captured. Today, the merman is on display in a glass case in the back room of the Banff Indian Trading Post, captivating visitors who delight in debating where the beast truly came from. As the 19th century progressed, there was an increase in visitation to the valley. With the additional traffic came several different names for the same body of water, including Cannibal's Lake, Devil's Lake, and Devil's Head Lake, all of which possess satanic nomenclature, which is common for the area. Today we know the lake simply as Lake Minnewanka, an anglicized version of the Stoney word Minwaki. The name was officially recognized by the Department of the Interior in 1888, but not before the first hotel was built along the shoreline that was affectionately known as the Beach House. By 1912, a small community called Minnewanka Landing had been established, complete with hotels, wharves, restaurants, and sailing tours. The lake's original footprint was much smaller in those days and was considerably less deep. The lake was dammed 3 times to increase the water level, the most recent of which was in 1941 when the War Measures Act superseded the National Parks Act, which excluded industrial development within national park boundaries. As a result of the dams, the only visitors to Minnewanka Landing today are scuba divers. When the latest dam was installed, the townsite was flooded, leaving foundations, fireplaces, sidewalks, and the remains of the second dam forever entombed in the lake's murky depths. Nobody was killed when the village was flooded, but having a ghost town at the bottom of such a mystifying body of water only adds to Minnewanka's supernatural allure. Much like those before us, the lake and surrounding wilderness still attracts throngs of visitors and recreationalists hoping to bask in its natural beauty, and maybe even discover some of its hidden secrets. The Minnewanka Trail runs along the lake's northern shoreline and features several backcountry campgrounds. The 25-kilometer trail is very popular with hikers, backpackers, and mountain bikers. If you assumed the stories and legends of spirits were only contained to the water, you'd be mistaken. In the late 1800s, reports began surfacing of a large creature that was spotted along Minnewanka's shoreline. Additional stories about gargantuan footprints, hair-raising screams, and sightings of enormous furry beasts began flooding the local press, which spawned the legend of the Lake Minnewanka Wild Man. In ensuing years, reports of the critter became sporadic until they dissipated in the early 20th century. Although modern-day Sasquatch enthusiasts have not relinquished their theory that a Bigfoot-like creature still roams the wilds of Canada's flagship park. No matter the truth or where you fall on the belief spectrum, there's no denying that Lake Minnewanka possesses a spirit all on its own. So there you go. Lake Minnewanka actually as a ghost town at the bottom of the lake. The lake was dammed up a few times and it flooded this town site that used to be there, which is very cool. If you're a scuba diver, it's a really cool place to maybe try and check out. The whole merman thing, in my opinion, is just like a made-up story. If you look at the specimen, the merman specimen at the Banff Trading Post, you can tell that it's something that somebody made up, you know. What it reminds me of kind of is the Minnesota Iceman thing. You know, you have somebody that created a fake specimen of some sort of cryptozoological creature and, you know, wanted to show it around. And I'm sure back in the day they charged people to go look at it. But nowadays it's just in a store on display. You can go and have a look at it. And you can get pretty close to it and look at it in detail. But Lake Minnewanka is known also for these Bigfoot reports. Back in the 1800s, there were so many reports coming out of people seeing this creature, spotting it, you know, walking along the shore of the lake. And in the vast majority of these reports, people opened fire on it. We're talking about the late 1800s. We're talking about the Wild West. You know, everybody had a gun. And when you see something like that, something like Bigfoot, that's not supposed to exist, something that is, you know, 8 or 9 feet tall, weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds, has tracks up to 19 inches long. You know, tracks were reported at Lake Minnewanka that were up to 19 inches long, and that is long. If you aren't aware of how long 19 inches is, you know, to put it into perspective, that is 19 inches long. Imagine a foot that long. That's crazy. And it's a really big animal. So, you know, it does make sense if people back then saw something like this, they would open up on it. They would see these tracks, they'd be like, what the heck is going on here? There is a monster here, for sure. These Bigfoot reports kind of tie into the missing people reports at Lake Minnewanka. We're going to get into that in a bit as well, but, you know, you also have to think you're in an area that's in a national park, you're in a protected area, there's lots of wildlife, there's bears everywhere. These areas around Banff are packed full of bears of every kind, grizzly bears, black bears, you know, mothers, cubs, and they're dangerous. There's warning signs usually everywhere in Banff. People get attacked all the time. There was an attack not too far away from Lake Minnewanka at a place called Lake Louise. If you're from Canada, you've heard of Lake Louise. But a few years ago, I think there was 6 or so people that were camping there, and they were all injured by a bear in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m., and this bear tried to get into a tent that had people sleeping in it, and they had to fight it off. So there was some pretty terrifying stuff happens in these areas, and, you know, you have to think, like, these Bigfoot reports could be misidentifications. It could just be bear activity. You know, bears like to stand up. Sometimes bears can walk around on 2 legs. And you do have the double step that bears do quite often, where like the back paw will step into the track of the front paw, and it makes an illusion that appears to be a Bigfoot track. You know, it almost looks like a human-like footprint, except on a really large scale. Anyways, enough of me blabbering. Let's get into some of these Bigfoot stories from the late 1800s. Lake Minnewanka is located in Banff National Park, Alberta, Canada. The information provided here was collected through a variety of sources, including archive reports, old newspapers, and local legends. Lake Minnewanka was once known as Devil's Lake. Some location names that include devil are known to have a history with Sasquatch. The first indication of the creature that became known as the Lake Minnewanka Wildman took place in late 1895. Several people were out fishing along the southern shore of the lake when they found footprints of gargantuan size. They estimated that the prints were 19 inches long. Then in early 1896, footprints of the same size were found again near the shore. The individual who discovered the prints decided to follow them, and he found that they led to a hole broken in the ice of the frozen lake. From that point, they trailed off into the woods, and he stopped following them. In the late spring of 1896, a trapper was checking his lines when he noticed a large creature moving in the distance. It walked towards the woods and ducked to avoid a tree limb that was across its path. Later, the trapper inspected the area where the creature had ducked, and he found that the limb was more than 7 feet above the ground. This indicated that the creature was considerably greater than 7 feet tall. In the late summer of 1896, 2 prospectors spotted what they thought was a great bear. They shouldered their rifles and fired at it. To their surprise and horror, the creature stood up on 2 legs and emitted a most horrible shriek. It then ran off into the forest. As it disappeared, they could still hear it screaming from within the forest. they quickly left the area. In early winter of 1897, the creature lurked near the outskirts of a temporary settlement. The dogs in the area raised the alarm, and men armed with rifles came running to see what had caused their dogs to bark and growl so ferociously. The creature was almost immediately spotted and was greeted by a hail of gunfire. Once again, it ran away screaming and disappeared into the forest. It wasn't until late summer 1897 that the creature was seen again. This time, two young boys watched it at a distance as it walked along a small ridge and disappeared from sight. They ran home to tell the others of what they had seen. The creature seemed to disappear from the area for a while, perhaps fed up with trigger-happy settlers. It was not sighted again until fall of 1898. This time, a man fishing along the lakeshore sighted it from an estimated distance of 40 to 50 yards. The creature bared its teeth and growled at the man, and once again it was fired upon. It ran from the area emitting hair-raising cries. It was believed that the creature was hit by at least one of the bullets, as spots of blood were found on some of the trees in the area. In early winter 1898, 2 Irish wolfhounds were found dead just outside a small settlement. Footprints 19 inches long were found in the area. The settlers mounted a hunt for the creature, but nothing was found. In the spring of 1899, the creature was spotted near a cabin, watching a pair of horses stationed in a small corral. The inhabitant of the cabin appeared to have caught it off guard, as we are told he shot it with a lever-action rifle and apparently hit it at least 3 times. It fell to the ground, but quickly rose again and dashed off into the forest. In the late summer of 1899, a small pile of fish bones was found near the lakeshore with several 19-inch long footprints nearby. In early winter of 1899, a man on horseback spotted a creature at a distance. It was walking towards the west, and the witness noticed that it had a very bad limp. Perhaps this was the effect of being shot so many times. The man watched it until it disappeared into the distant tree line. That was the last report of the Lake Minnewanka Wildman. Perhaps it decided to give up on the Lake Minnewanka area and head to a place where there were fewer people and naturally fewer bullets to dodge. Whatever the fate of the creature, this is probably the last we will ever hear of it. Well, there you have it. You have a mysterious town sunken at the bottom of the lake. You have legends of a merman-like creature swimming in the waters. And then you have all these strange wild man or Bigfoot reports. And, all these stories of people shooting at the thing. And it, running off into the woods, screaming, and not dying, essentially. Which is also very crazy. Most Bigfoot reports that we hear when people shoot at it, they swear they hit it, they shot at it, they aimed right at it, but the creature continued on, almost as if it wasn't shot. It's just able to survive getting shot by rifle rounds, which is crazy. But then you do have these missing people reports, and these missing people reports are not from the 1800s, though I'm sure it must have happened back then. People going missing all the time. They're in uncharted lands, basically. These places aren't as explored as they are nowadays. But these missing people reports are modern reports. There's people that are still gone that haven't been found. And that is very interesting, and that is very crazy, especially in an area that sees so much human traffic. You see a lot of tourists going to these spots, and people are still going missing, and the bodies are just vanishing. They're not ever being found. So let's have a look at some of these missing persons reports. Remains of missing BC man found by hiker near Lake Minnewanka. Published Thursday, May 3, 2016. Dental records have confirmed the identity of human remains that were discovered in Banff National Park at the end of April as that of a man who was reported missing to RCMP in Whistler last year. William Linsky, 21, was reported missing in Vancouver by his family in April 2017. His image was captured on CCTV on April 12th as he boarded a bus to Edmonton, and he checked into a hotel in that city the following day. A ping from a cell phone was logged near Calgary on April 14th, and Linsky's family was hopeful after they were notified about a post on Facebook from a woman who said that she found Willie's driver's license in the Cascade Mall in Banff. His mother made the trip to Banff earlier this year to put up posters around town, hoping that someone would come forward with information about her son's disappearance. A year after Linsky's disappearance, RCMP and Whistler were contacted by police in Banff after a hiker discovered human remains in an area near Lake Minnewanka on April 25, 2018. The medical examiner used dental records to confirm the remains were that of the missing man. Police say the cause of death is not yet known, but that it does not appear to be suspicious in nature. Police say the family has been notified. Lake Minnewanka search ceased for missing man, published on October 17, 2019. Sergeant Michael Buxton Carr with the Banff RCMP detachment confirmed on October 17th that Yannick Bastien has not yet been recovered and is still considered to be a missing person, after RCMP searched Lake Minnewanka and the surrounding area with a police dog team and dive operations. Yannick Bastien, 26 years old, from Airdrie, was last seen on the evening of September 21st. He had taken his canoe to Lake Minnewanka, where Banff RCMP recovered his truck and a red canoe. Parks Canada has also concluded a search for Mr. Bastien at Lake Minnewanka. After exhaustive efforts, Parks Canada suspended their search operations on October 9th. Although the physical search of Lake Minnewanka has ceased, the Banff RCMP said they still wish to hear from any person who may have information about Mr. Bastien. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact the Banff RCMP. He is described as a Caucasian male, approximately 5'7" and 175 pounds, with brown hair, blue eyes, and a scruffy beard. Edward Conrad Ludwig, missing from Banff National Park since 1986. On May 30th, 1986, Edward Ludwig left his worksite at Bow Valley Provincial Park, Alberta, to go boating on Lake Minnewanka in Banff National Park, Alberta. Mr. Ludwig was despondent when he left. His vehicle was located at Lake Minnewanka, and an unoccupied boat was found floating on the lake. Edward was last heard from on May 30th, 1986, when he was 27 years of age. This individual has now been missing for about 35 years as of the original publication date of this blog post. His car was found near Lake Minnewanka in Banff National Park. That's just 20 minutes or so driving west from Canmore, the town that he is missing from. What stands out about this case is that he was reported to be despondent. Furthermore, his vehicle was found at Lake Minnewanka and his empty boat was floating in the lake. The location of his boat, which was actually an inflatable raft according to journalism from 1986, is interesting because it really sounds like he fell into the lake or perhaps killed himself at the lake. There was a search of the area with dogs and divers. This missing person was a park ranger whose father was a judge, so it's likely that a very diligent search would have been performed. Lake Minnewanka is a glacial lake, meaning that it's fed by melting snow off the caps of the mountains in the area. You do not go into Lake Minnewanka unless it's absolutely at the peak time of summer. Even then, you would only go in the lake for about a minute if you don't mind a chill afterwards. The water is very cold in this lake, and on May 30th, the day in 1986 when he went missing, the water would have been absolutely frigid. If a person drowns in a lake, there's a known process that usually occurs. The individual sinks as water replaces oxygen in his body cavities. Then the organs that are still alive in the body continue to produce gases. These gases help bring the body to the surface. It's at this point that the body might be found, and this initial process can take about a week. However, eventually, the gases will be released by the body and it will sink, perhaps for ages. Finding Edward Ludwig now would mean staying open-minded to the possibility that any human remains found in the area are his. Due to how much time has passed since 1986, his body might not be intact. Those are just a few missing people reports that are from more recent times. The one report, the guy went missing back in the 80s, still hasn't been found, but the other two are more recent. And those are just ones that are documented that I quickly found online. I'm sure if you did a lot more digging around, you'd probably find more. And I think it's safe to assume that throughout the last, couple hundred years, many more people had disappeared, and who knows where they went. Their remains still could be out in those mountains, out maybe even at the bottom of Lake Minnewanka. So anyways, you can make of this story what you will. Lake Minnewanka, or Devil's Lake, is accessible to people. So if you're from Canada, if you're from Alberta, if you're even from like BC, or even if you're in the States in like Montana, make the journey up into Alberta to Banff National Park, go check out Lake Minnewanka and do some exploring. But be very careful, be on guard, because not only is there opportunity to go missing, but there's opportunity to get attacked by a grizzly bear. So be really careful. It's just one of those places that has a high amount of Bigfoot activity, apparently, and is very accessible to people. So it's really easy to get to. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.